break the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages, He stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross is spoken and I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me His own. Beautiful Savior, and I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion, he declared the grave has no claim. Yes, we believe it, and hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. God, you are my living hope.
What is up, Dayspring College? My name is Matt. For those of you who do not know me, I'm one of the ministry residents at Dayspring, and so I get the awesome privilege to be a part of our college ministry. And so today I will be bringing a lesson to you guys from Romans 3:21 through 26. And as you guys are scrolling there or turning your pages there, and I just want you guys to think about something real quick. Just think about this. Think about the statement. When things are going good, things are going good, right? I guess if you're grammatically correct, it'd be when things are going well, things are going well. And what I mean by that, when things are going well, when our routine is in check, when things are just going good, that things are going good, right? But when things are going bad, things are going bad. Like right now, the pandemic, the situation that our country's going through, that the world's going through. When things are going bad, right? Like our schools online, our schedules are all just discombobulated. Things are just not flowing smoothly like they used to. Like before this pandemic happened, things were going well. We were in our routines and everything, but now as this time has come, we are just in we're just like we feel like our world is just flipped upside down. And sometimes in hard situations, in tough times, things that are outside of our control, all we have to hold on to is our hope. Whatever hope that is in, or whatever that hope is for, that's what we have to hold on to. Whether it during a family situation, maybe things at home aren't going so well, or maybe a career change. A lot of us are in college, and so maybe something happened that was outside of our control, to where we have to change majors. Or maybe something unseen changed our lives. Like right now, this was unseen, and it completely changed our lives. We gotta stay home and everything. And so what convicted me of this is like, man, in the midst of this challenging times, when's the last time you reminded yourself of the joy that comes from the eternal salvation that was freely given to you? That like the hope that this offers too. I mean, when's the last time that you reminded yourself of that? And if that's you right now, like if you're with me, like when's the last time you reminded yourself? If you remind yourself right now, does that bring you joy and hope and peace in the midst of this situation, in the midst of this pandemic? That really convicted me, because that means I lost sight of the true importance, of the true power, of the true just eternal weight of the cross and Jesus Christ. And so we're going to go ahead and jump into Romans 3, but before we get to verses 21 and 26, I just want to do a quick summary of the verses before that section. So in verses 1 and 8, Paul is reminding the Jewish people that because they were Jewish, they did have an advantage, right? Because they were God's chosen people, they were given, they were given the oracles of God, they were given the law. And so even though they weren't faithful to God, God was still faithful to them. And then in verses 9 through 20, Paul, he writes a mashup of Psalms and Proverbs. And he does this to show the audience that none of them are righteous. Right? 9 through 20 have all these different kind of sins and things that are human nature, that are sin nature, and that's why we're not righteous. And that all these result from verse 18, where it says, "There was no fear of God before their eyes." So ultimately, what the previous verses in 9 through 20, before they get to 18, all those things right there, those are a result from because no one has fear of God before their eyes. And so now we're going to get into Romans 3, 21 and 26. And this passage brings full circle the story of sin and reconciliation. See, Paul is, in chapters 1, 2, and 3, he's continuing this argument. Right, he's continuing this discussion, and we get to verses 21 and 20 through 26 in chapter 3, and it brings full circle the story of sin and reconciliation. So, in my opinion, I believe this passage, Romans 3, 21 and 26, and Ephesians 2 and 1 through 10, are some of the most important passages in the Bible, because it reminds us the story. It brings full circle. It shows us the gospel. I mean, verses 21 and 20 through 26, it's the gospel written out. And so let's go ahead and dive in. Let me go ahead and read those verses for us. So in verse 21 it says, "But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law. Although the law and the prophets bear witness to it, the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Jesus Christ, whom God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. It was to show this righteousness at the present time, so that he might be the just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus." And so I'm just going to take this time right now, and we're just going to go verse by verse. And I just kind of want to pull some things out, and hopefully they offer encouragement and hope in this time. And so verse 21, Paul is saying that the righteousness of God is made known apart from the law. So if you remind yourself who's the original audience of Paul's letter, the Church of Rome, which was combined of Gentiles and Jewish people. The Jewish people, their whole life was surrounded by the law, right? They were obsessed with the law. Like their history was the law. And so for when Paul says this, obviously they're going to be confused because they're going to be like, why? I don't understand what he's saying. Like, this doesn't make sense at all. But then if you do some history, the Old Testament scriptures talk about the same way to salvation as Paul does. See, Paul's way to salvation wasn't a works-based salvation. It was a faith-based salvation. So through faith, you received salvation. So that, and that's and the Old Testament talks about that. Like when Abraham was seen right before God, it was through his faith. It wasn't through his works. It wasn't through him upholding the law. It was through his faith that he was seen right and righteous before God. And then in verse 22, it says, for all who believe. See, this for all who believe it's an inclusive statement. For all, but there's a twist to it. Who believe. See, it wasn't just for all, period. It was for all who believe. So if you didn't believe this, you know, there's no reason for you to read on. You know, so belief was a requirement in verse 22 for all who believed. And then we get to verse 23. And it says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. For all have sinned. See, Paul uses another inclusive statement, but this inclusive statement is different from the one in 22 because this one means everybody. Even if you don't believe what Paul's writing, this includes you. For all have sinned. See, because the only person who was able to live and walk on this earth sinless was Jesus Christ. Everyone else has sinned. See, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. See, the fall short literally means lacking. So we are lacking the glory of God in our sinful state. If you remember back to chapter 1, you know, Paul talks about how we exchange the glory of God for the glory of created things. See, Adam and Eve, they were given the glory of God in the garden, but they exchanged that for the glory of created things, and we do the same thing in our lives every day. We're given the glory of God, but we exchange it for glory of created things. And you can whatever fits that definition is sin, right? So money, popularity, relationships, whatever it is, an addiction, that we exchange the glory of God for those things. And so that is verse 23. But here is the good news. This is the good news of great joy right here. Verses 24. Let me read it. It says, and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Jesus Christ. So in verse 23, all have sinned, but we're justified by his grace as a gift. See, God's grace is a gift. Nothing is owed. We can't pay for this. We can't be like, okay, God, here's my repayment for that gift that you gave me. No, see, the NIV, the NIV says, and all are justified freely. Free. You know, there's no payment, right? So as college kids, we love free things. You know, free food, free whatever it is. Even if it's something that we don't even use, if it's free, we're going to take it because it's free, right? But the one thing is someone's like, hey, here's a free, candy bar. We're going to ask the question, what do we have to do to get it? Because in our world, nothing's really free. Right? Do you have to fill out a survey? Do you have to count to 10? Do you have to, whatever, like, how do I get this free thing? Because in our world, nothing's free. But here, it is completely and ultimately free. Because there's nothing that we can do to repay God in this time. See, we are set right and blameless before God as a gift. We did not make this happen. Me, you, Apostle Paul, he did not make this happen. We can't do anything to earn this, to pay for this, to acquire this. It was given as a gift. See, Jesus did something. Jesus Christ, he did something that made me right before God when I am not right, when you are not right. And that's such good news. See, because we're still sinful. We're not perfect. But when God looks at us, he sees his son's blood. He sees the cross. He sees what his son did on the cross. And that's what he sees in us. And then verse 25. It says, whom God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. It was to show his righteousness at the present time, so that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. And so when I read that verse 25, the one thing that popped out in your mind, that the big word was propitiation, right? Propitiation is one of those words you're kind of like, all right, Google, here I come. But propitiation means a sacrifice that removes wrath. So God sent his son Jesus as a propitiation. So Jesus wiped the wrath away from us, and he put it on himself. See, God became a curse to take our curse. He knew no sin, and he became sin. And see, the gift, how you receive the gift, we can't do anything to get this gift except through faith. Faith is receiving, faith isn't doing. That's how you receive the gift, is by faith. See, faith isn't an action, we receive it, it's a reception. So you can't do faith and acquire salvation, require the grace that God gives. You receive it by God freely. So right now, just in our application, I just want to take a time. And as I read this passage, I was super convicted. Because truthfully, I seldom think about the saving grace of God and how he changed my eternity. Something that was such great news and can bring such great hope is something that I barely think about or remind myself about. And that broke me. That absolutely broke me, brought me to my knees. And so right now, I just encourage you guys, we have so much time on our hands. We have too much time on our hands. The rest of this week, take time. Set aside a block of however long. It doesn't even have to be long. Just set aside some time to remind yourself of your personal story. Who you were, where you were going before Christ, who you are, and where you're going after Christ. You know, how we lack the glory of God, but by God's free gift through Jesus Christ, we are made right and blameless and get to spend eternity with Jesus. And that will bring you so much joy and hope because you know where we are for eternity. We know where we're going to be and who we're going to be with for eternity, and that is awesome. It's such good news. But for some of you, maybe this isn't you. Maybe you can't think of a story like that. And maybe this lesson sparks some interest in you. Like, you know what? I want that kind of hope and good news in my life. You know, this right now sucks, and I want that hope and good news in my life. And in Romans 10, it says this. It says, "And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." In that same chapter, it says this: "If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved." So right now, I want you to pray that prayer, that you believe Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. And if you're going to pray that, or if you have prayed that, I pray that you DM us. That is good news that does not need to be kept secret. It is great news that needs to be celebrated. And if that's you, please just DM us. Right now, let me go ahead and pray for us real quick, guys, and then we'll be done. Father God, Lord, thank you for today. God, thank you for passages like this that remind us of who you are, God, of your love, of Jesus and the cross. Lord, I pray that we can remind ourselves of our personal story and your saving grace, and that it brings us hope in times like these, God. In your name I pray. Amen.